President Trump's war of choice with Iran and Pete Hegseth's dysfunctional Pentagon leadership are raising new concerns about the safety of U.S. service members. Former Navy commanders tell us now they worry about the high levels of wear and tear on American aircraft carriers, some of which have broken modern-day records for deployment length. They point to the catapults that launch fighter jets and the gear that catches them when they land on the floating runways, all of which have been used extensively over nearly 6 months of fast-paced and unplanned warfare. One retired Navy captain saying, quote, "We are excessively wearing out our ships. The longer that you're working them hard at sea, the more the Navy needs to invest time into maintenance." The Navy did not respond to MS Now's request for comment about delayed maintenance on those ships. I'm going to bring in MS Now Pentagon reporter Priya Sridhar, who broke that story. Ned Price, Mitch Landrieu are still with us. Priya, you've reported on problems with the USS Lincoln, but experts say this kind of maintenance debt has a domino effect. What are they telling you?
Yeah, that's right, Alicia. Well, typically when an aircraft carrier comes back to the United States, it goes into the docks for a maintenance period, which is usually around 7 to 8 months. But because we've seen so many aircraft carriers double the length of their deployments from what's usually about 6 to 7 months to as long as 12 months, it makes sense then that maintenance period then can get extended to a year or a year and a half. And in addition to that, specifically with the Lincoln, we saw it go at sea for 208 continuous days without a port call, which meant that when an aircraft carrier pulls into port, it allows mechanics and engineers and contractors to come on the ship and address different maintenance issues that could come up. So all of that combined together is creating a potential for extreme danger and safety issues, because when you're talking about those catapults and those arresting gears, I mean, if something were to go wrong there, it could lead potentially to a deadly accident, Alicia.
You know, Mitch Landrieu, Priya and I were on earlier this week. We were talking with Amy McGrath, and she reminded us this is not about the members of the armed services needing to be cuddled. It is not specifically about a ship itself. It is about clear leadership from both the commander-in-chief and the person who leads DOD. I want you to take a listen to what Senator Mark Kelly said about the president's leadership.
He took our country to war without a strategic goal, without a plan. Now he has no way out of this, and he's stuck. And this has been bungled right from the beginning. And he's got a Secretary of Defense who has no idea what he's doing. I think the most incompetent Secretary of Defense that we've ever had in our history. And the American people are suffering because of this. We also have 18 dead Americans, for no reason.
Mitch, how would you describe the leadership that is coming from the White House and from the Pentagon right now?
Well, again, as Pete Hegseth's words would use, war fighters actually know how to prosecute a war. And obviously, this is just a complete disaster. First of all, the president promised people that he was going to end the war in Ukraine on day one and stay out of foreign wars. Instead, the war in Ukraine is just blowing and going. And of course, he started this war of choice, and he did it in a way that was not planned well. He picked Pete Hegseth, who was incompetent, to be the head of this war effort. And what did Pete Hegseth do the other day? Was he doing something to fix this particular problem? No, he was campaigning as Secretary of Defense. We haven't seen this in our lifetime. He was campaigning in Iowa rather than taking care of his quote unquote war fighters. So again, this is an indication that the president has lost focus, that his leadership, it can't be called that, is just high incompetence. And they have basically bungled what was a war of choice, and they didn't even prosecute well because they didn't plan well for it. It all goes back to the president. So if a president's reckless, if he cares more about ballrooms and bombs, if he can't even prosecute a war and he's not taking care of the American people, what the hell is he doing? So it is a mell of a hess, as we like to say down here on the bayou.
Part of what has become so notable is the fact that you have family of sailors, of Marines aboard the Lincoln who've been increasingly voicing their concerns to the press and the Pentagon. I want to play for all of you some of what the family of one sailor told the New York Times. It starts with her mom and then her husband.
I keep hearing, well, they signed up for this. They didn't sign up to be on a ship in the middle of the ocean with no port calls, no feet on the ground. That wasn't in the brochure when they signed up.
She's been struggling. I think the only thing that helps her is when she gets the videos from me of the boys. That brings her spirits up.
To infinity and beyond.
record this for the boys while she's on deployment because she misses them so much. I haven't gotten them as much sleep because I have been nervous about her, and I'm also nervous about the boys because I don't have my partner here to help me with them.
These conditions, what do they mean for morale? What do they mean for recruitment? And then in some, what do they mean for our national security?
Well, look, there's a cost, there's a toll that's incurred by these warships, and we've seen some of the conditions aboard them. But yes, we have to be most concerned with the mental health, with the physical, with the safety concerns that our men and women in uniform face every single day. These are people who signed up for sacrifice. They're no stranger to sacrifice. But these are individuals who, by and large, want to know that their sacrifice are being made in service of the United States, of our national security, of our foreign policy, of the safety, security, well-being, health, and prosperity of every single American. And it's really hard, if not impossible, to make that case right now, which I think is also sapping morale. Look, one can argue if there was ever any strategy associated with this misadventure in Iran. I would make that case. I don't think there was ever a real strategy tethered to it. But if there ever was one, we've moved past the strategy phase now, and now we're at the phase of throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. And just last night, to the point of what we're asking our sailors, airmen, and Marines to fight for, President Trump said it's now about economic pressure, maximum economic pressure. Okay, well, you know what his strategy in his first term against Iran was called? Maximum pressure. We have tried this before. It did not work the first time. If it's going to work this time, there are two problems standing in the way. One is the UAE, and the other is China. This president, I don't think, will be willing to ask the UAE, that has provided sweetheart deals to him, to his family, to his friends, to make the kind of economic sacrifices they'll have to do. And with President Xi of China coming to the United States on September 24th, a relationship the president wants to keep at equilibrium for the American economy and in turn for his poll numbers, most importantly, I don't think he wants to upset that either. So it goes back to the question of what's our strategy? How are we going to pull our service members out of this with anything in return?
And who has input into that strategy? Pete Hegseth's wife, Jennifer Hegseth, is attracting attention for her unusually active role in the Pentagon. You have the New York Times reporting she is his most influential advisor and his de facto producer at the Pentagon. She has prepped him for appearances, sat in on his meetings with journalists, interviewed potential members of his staff, and brainstormed ideas for the Defense Department videos he and sometimes she appears in. She also sits in highly sensitive intelligence meetings. That's according to reports, which has made allies incredibly uncomfortable. I wonder, Priya, what you were hearing from inside the Pentagon.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is incredibly hypocritical because Secretary of Defense Hegseth kicked out most of the press corps because he was saying that we were wandering around the halls trying to get access to classified information, yet you're seeing his wife be privy to very sensitive information when it comes to military operations. So I think his logic just doesn't apply when it's not convenient for him. And I think that is what's most upsetting to most people, journalists, I should say, that work inside of the Pentagon specifically, is that if we're not allowed to go inside because we're supposedly trying to solicit classified information from people, then why is someone who doesn't have a national security background, doesn't have a security clearance, sitting in on these extremely important meetings?
Mitch, I mean, it happens at the same time that the longtime publisher of the military newspaper Stars and Stripes is retiring due to clashes with the Pentagon over coverage. In a memo seen by the Associated Press, Max Lederer Jr. wrote that it had, quote, become clear that my philosophy of leadership and my understanding of the value and mission of Stars and Stripes differ in fundamental ways from the direction of the leadership of the Department of Defense has for the organization. What does that tell you, Mitch Landrieu, about what is happening at the Pentagon?
Well, again, he's basically destroying the Pentagon and its top leadership. If you put the pictures up of all of the warfighters that he has fired for some strange reason, which have had, I mean, years and years and years of incredible experience, and now he's relying on people who just happen to be personally close to him to give him information about how to fight a war that he wasn't prepared to fight. I mean, it's just, it should make everybody in America weep. I mean, it's one of the reasons why they basically drove the car off into a ditch and they don't know what to do. He doesn't have the most competent people around him, all the while he's complaining about DEI. He's not running an organization based on merit. But again, it all goes back to the president. The president of the United States put Pete Hegseth there. The president of the United States has given him the run. The president of the United States allowed him to go to Iowa. So the fish rots from the head. The buck stops at Donald Trump's office. He is too busy on the helipad and the ballrooms to focus on what really matters to the security of the American people. And he's